right. You can bask in their glow. Drive that Acura like it's a Benz. You got a millionaire's fear. Woo! All 40 grand a year. You send your own job away. Then you cut your own fucking pay. You watch a rich man's news. You push a rich man's views. Oh, you hate the working stiff and his nasty union dues. Company man, you paid your dues, now you think you're part of the plan? Yeah, company man. You're on your own cause these colors went and done ran. Company man. You're living high, but guess what? Your income's low. Company man. You got no power, they just made you think so. Be a king if you're...
So here we go again. I've been actively avoiding recording my thoughts for the masses again for almost a year now. Who am I? An American millennial of the brown variety. That's what's important. Yeah. I'd been putting this off for months and months and months just because there's so many people in the lefty sphere of podcasting and YouTube news, in which it's just an echo chamber. You can turn on a few notable channels and each of them are covering the exact same subjects on the same day, which were just articles that happened to pop up in their Google News feed. This is a proletariat. This show is not a lefty echo chamber. It's just not going to be one of those. I will possibly comment on whatever stories making the huge Twitter buzz of the week from time to time, but for the most part, this podcast is meant to support you, my brethren, as working class citizens here in 21st century America, where if you grew up in the 90s, yeah, we're not in Kansas anymore, folks. So much has changed for the worse here in America over the past 40 years. I am 36 myself. And yeah, it's not hard to see that the millennial and aka Zoomer generations aren't making anywhere near as much an income as our parents or grandparents were. We seemingly don't have any opportunities to accrue any sort of wealth, whether it be in homes or other investments. If you look at the entry fees for starting a business the legit way, getting all your licenses and certificates and filing fees, and I mean, typically your entry fee for starting your own business the aka legit way is roughly $10,000. Most people can't afford a $400 emergency. I mean, heck, myself, my last employer stiffed me for about a week's worth of pay for 2 weeks, the point to where like I couldn't even afford to afford gas or a bus pass to even make it to that job to continue to try to gain income. And I mean, that whole 2 weeks, no responses, calls, never met with any replies. Text messages, just, yeah, it was just dead air. So, yeah, starting a business is not or it doesn't seem like a very viable option for most of the working class here in America in 2021, especially. Uh, we're going to touch a little more on that further here in the podcast. But let me give you a little bit of my background. Um, I started working at the age of 15. My entry into the workforce was via retail, in which I actually took a summer retail sales class and learned some of the dirty secrets, such as the name brand companies not using quality material so that you would purchase more of their brand products, things of that nature. Started off, I had an internship with my best friend in high school at the Sears and the Stonewood Mall over in Downey, California. And we worked our asses off. And it was to the point to where we had several department managers who were sort of fighting for us. And, being the naive teenagers that we were, we were very prideful of this fact. Um, Looking back on it, you realize, oh yeah, of course they wanted the hardest workers in the store who were working for absolutely $0 an hour. It was free labor, and they were very much willing to take advantage of that. It did not return. That investment did not return as or in the form of employment at that store once that program ended, sadly. But it figures, right? Once you kind of learn more a bit about how this capitalist society works, it starts to make sense. So after that, I had many different jobs in retail, from your Walmarts to your Targets to your Home Depots. I merchandised for several companies, including Pepsi, which they were actually a decent company to merchandise for back in the early 2000s. It was my fourth job, and I was making $10 an hour back in 2005. That was a big deal. I mean, without a college degree. Um, and back then, merchandising for those soda companies were your typical 8-hour job. There was overtime if people called out, but you were under no obligation to be forced to work 16 to 20 hours a week, 6 days a week, and then be called in on your seventh day, your day off, only to be fired if you declined. How things have changed. I ended up merchandising for Dr. Pepper Snapple Group, or I think they were kind of going under 7 Up at the time in San Diego. This is around 2013. And yeah, it was a total culture shock hopping back into beverage merchandising and seeing what a slave labor factory it had become. Oh my God. Uh, so my heart's out to all of those in the beverage industry, merchandisers out there in food and beverage. I wholeheartedly support you in your strikes to get more benefits, better pay, and to work less hours. So keep doing it, and I implore you, please try to uh, organize this on a more massive scale. You get little wildfires of protests and strikes here and there, but they quite frankly, uh, there's not enough networking in the left sphere. And the way unionization has been just absolutely cannibalized in the last 50 years, yeah, we need to do something about strengthening that institution. I mean, do your research. All the facts show that people employed with the union backing typically have better working conditions and better pay overall when compared to those areas that are, are not unionized. Texas, I'm looking at you. Alabama, need I say more? But yes, I have about 20 years in retail, have about 5 years in IT. And that was another rude awakening to the death of the American dream, that whole fallacy. Back in 2010, I had my second child, and we were in the early throes of the Great Recession of 2008 and that whole debacle. So I had the opportunity to, um, make a decision, stay in retail, which I felt was pretty dead end, especially as an African American in that sector. Moving up was very difficult because they just wanted you to be the workhorse to pull pallets all the time. So I decided to hop into a seemingly booming industry. What was that industry? Overall, IT. I specifically went to focus on computer networking. Great education. Uh, wrong time, right? Getting into that career field in the 90s, maybe up until the early 2000s. Yeah, great time to try to get into computer networking, to become a networking administrator, things of that nature. Unfortunately, after the 2010s, that whole network, or excuse me, that whole sector or industry, everything moved to cloud hosting, and everything was web based, and all those jobs essentially turned into call centers. Which, if you worked at a call center, if heard the term call center before, you understand how horrible those places are. So I did about 5 years of that for accountants, lawyers, bookkeepers, and such. And yeah, you want to talk about the stress of getting death threats and things from people whose money was affected because they chose to select a product that was sold to them. And a lot of times under false pretenses in those sectors. I'm not going to call out anybody in particular, but yeah, try to stay away from those places like the plague. Matter of fact, the anecdote I gave you about being stiffed a whole week's worth of pay, that was at a call center here in San Antonio, where I live. Yeah, I can't do call centers. Stay away from those places. I mean, just absolutely desperate. Give it as good a go as you can for as long as you can. That's all I'm going to say about that. So yeah, I've done so much. From working on cars to driving big box trucks the size of FedEx, UPS trucks, to towing whatever vehicles, driving passenger vans, plumbing, light carpentry, landscaping. I mean, you name it. I've had people look at me weird and ask how old I am when seeing my resume. And this was like at the age of 25, mind you, because I've just worked at so many places. Now, the reason for me doing that was honestly at the time I was young. I had not so many attachments and obligations holding me down, so I was chasing money. I was trying to make as much as I could for my labor, for the hours of my life that I was selling. And would I do it again? No. However, welcome to October 2021, and here we are. It's sort of a mad scramble, knives out sort of situation in which you really gotta kind of lower your standards here if you want to continue to participate in the traditional labor market here in the US. However, we have not had much of a traditional labor market here in the US since around 2008, when the gig economy first started rearing his ugly head. Uh, I wasn't so affected by that then. However, now I do find myself having to take part in it. Food delivery through Uber Eats. I'm not going to bash any of these companies in particular, but I will say it is what it is. It is the lowest rung of options when it comes to selling your labor and time, time of your life for a few dollars. Um, the reason why I chose to go this route now is because I'm in between jobs anyway, because my last employer created an issue in which I could not even commute to work for them. And so, understanding that there's no real stability in the traditional labor market here in the US, that illusion has totally faded away. The veil has been lifted, the mask has been cracked, right? So, for the time being, I am going this route, at least with this gig economy method. I do have the freedom to explore other options while trying to take care of the essentials. At least is better than nothing for the time being. Now, the girlfriend's also facing a very unstable situation with her retail employer. They are going through a massive campaign right now in which they are firing pretty much, you can expect, the highest earners who have been with the company for the longest, because now with the great resignation and the I sigh at that, it's not a labor shortage, but the AKA media spun labor shortage. It's one of those classic capitalist moves where the crash comes and capitalism takes advantage of that buffer of desperate unemployed folk, right? So now her employer will now start to offer the same jobs for longer hours and lower pay, right? And this is very reactionary to the campaign for at least $15 an hour minimum, right? And we know that at least $20 an hour scrapes the bottom of, I guess, your lower middle class category of workers. This is our reality. This is where we are, right? I'm just going to tell you, don't freak out, right? Don't freak out. It's very easy to do that. Internally, I am somewhat, and I'll explain that situation a little later. But yeah. I didn't get to all those things that I've done, all those many jobs that I've held, to boast. There's no pride in that at all. I wanted to bring that up to highlight the fact that I can do so much, and chances are very high, extremely high, that you can too, right? So often we underestimate ourselves and we sort of underplay our talents and our experiences because really we get caught up in the monotony and the sort of, we know a lot of these jobs we hold in these cubicles and retail floors are dead ends. And we're just doing our best to kind of maintain our sanity while we feign our smiles for some entitled customers who choose to ignore the fact that a pandemic has affected production for the past year and a half. So, before I get too far off topic here and on tangents, yeah, over your working life, you have acquired so many skills, so many talents that you haven't really thought about. So I'm going to just challenge you or encourage you to, take 20 minutes someday of your life sit down, maybe look over your resume, and you'll see some things there and go, "Oh, wow, I did do that." And if you can do that for 40 hours a week for an employer who is profiting way more off of your execution of those skills and your execution of your talents, at a time in which people have lost so much already, from the unfortunate deaths to the coronavirus pandemic, to all the businesses that closed down during this pandemic. And I mean, honestly, the pandemic is sort of a smokescreen in a sense too. These crashes, these economic crashes happen like clockwork, okay, about every 5 to 10 years on average. To me, it seems like the frequency is increasing, but that maybe that's just me. If there's any economists out there, hey, let me know. Is there a trend in which these crashes seem to be orchestrated, or seem to be happening a lot faster? But yeah, so a lot of people have already lost their homes. A lot of people are already out there looking for work, right? And a funny phenomenon is happening, and you would think it's funny unless you go back in history and kind of look at the trends during these economic crashes, right? You've seen it in the media as of late, and that's the employer ghosting, in which a lot of people are applying for these positions that remain to be open for months and months and months. You see them on your Indeed feed, or Glassdoor, or whatever job board of your choice, LinkedIn, and people are applying to these positions in droves, and no one is getting a single call or email back. No, you're not crazy. This is happening. And once again, it's just one of those fail safes built into this capitalist system. Once again, the more desperate people are, the lower standards they're willing to accept when it comes to future employment, right? And what does that do? That ultimately sets new norms, new normals for employment. I don't know about you, but kind of being in between jobs at the moment. Have any of you noticed that a lot of these positions are requiring more and more of our time, right? The standard has been for at least the past, 50 years here, that we work a 40-hour work week. I'm seeing more and more positions requiring 10 to 12 and up to $16 an hour if you're in the merchandising or IT fields, right? And this pay, I mean, we're talking about 11, 12, $13 an hour. I've seen some for much lower. Uh, and then a lot of Monday through Friday on call, and this is all in the same um, job posting. So just let me know if you notice this, if employers are definitely trying to squeeze more time out of our lives for less income. I'd like to know what you think. But yes, what are we ultimately talking about here now that all of my introductory rambling has been completed? We're talking about this great resignation, right? See it all over the news. It's all over your news feeds, your RSS feeds on your smart devices. And yeah, it's happening. Two sides to this coin, though, right? Part of it is, once again, an orchestrated failsafe of the capitalist system, which goes into effect during the crashes, which you can set your watch to, right? The other side is with employers offering less income for the hours of your labor and increasing uh, the hours of your life that they require you to be employed. I mean, a pizza joint cook, 10 hours? Really? Really? Mom and pop pizza joint, you want a cook for 10 hours, but you're only going to pay him $10 an hour. Really? Why do you need one person for $10 to make pizza? Anyway, so yeah, people are waking up to the fact that, hey, yeah, it's not the 90s anymore. Any semblance of loyalty from employers regarding their employees, yeah, that's they're not even playing that play anymore, right? Um, that song isn't even playing on the radio. So the facade is gone now, and honestly, employers are getting a little more belligerent, right? They're feeling like kings, as opposed to someone who needs people to help their business to remain as successful as it has been. Excuse me, there. Um, and yeah, you can only take advantage for so long. People do not want to work for you for 10 hours, taking calls, being a buffer for people upset about a crappy product or service, right? That you refuse to fix. And to shield your corporation from all of the angry backlash, you just employ a bunch of people at low wages to just be the brunt of that with no intentions of ever improving your business model. People don't want to take part in that anymore. They don't want to be yelled at and physically abused by people buying freaking spray paint, because instead of the employer, the corporation saying, hey, yeah, customers, it is our policy that you must wear a mask in our store. You just let them duke it out with your cashiers or your floor walkers. Like, come on now. It is bad enough the abuse that a lot of employees had to take from their employers, which was very sort of in that gray area that couldn't be classified necessarily as workplace harassment. But now those lines aren't so blurred anymore because, once again, just a lot of these employers are just feeling emboldened now, right? And people have had enough. My girlfriend, for instance, once again, working for a do-it-yourself a home retail employer. In the past few months, she's noticed, yeah, there's not very many associates on the floor, and now we have to cover 3 departments. And hey, they're getting rid of less people, so now they're scheduling me 9 days in a row. You know, yeah, it's what's the point if you can't make a living wage off of all of that time and toil you're giving to your employer? What's the point of even showing up anymore? You're wasting your life, you're wasting your time, and you're missing out on other opportunities to do something about it. Whether it is to maybe educate yourself in other skills, or uh, you know, change your career path, decide to go into business for yourself. Whatever that looks like to you. But yeah, people are realizing that they are spinning their wheels, right? They feel like the cogs of the machine in which they are. They are stuck in one spot, doing the same thing over and again, never advancing. Overall, though, the computer is working well, right? Or the machine is working well. The machine is receiving all the benefits. Heck, the cog can't even get a little oil put on it so it isn't getting eaten up with all the friction and the pressure, right? So enough of like crazy analogies. But yeah, they're fed up now. So the Great Resignation is happening, but it's a byproduct of the capitalist system, right? Now, what is noteworthy about the Great Resignation is that this time around, um, and once again, there's been a long span of time between now and the Great Depression, right? We've had other crashes here in the U.S., economic crashes that really devastated people's lives. Since then, we're talking about that there's been so much time between now and May Day, right? So just to see the amount of people willing to actually sort of decide to walk away from the system per se, and either go freelance or I don't know, maybe try their hand at this gig economy, while they try to figure something out. This is my situation. Uh, yeah, they're starting to figure out, maybe there's just better ways to do this. Um, and the first time since the Great Depression era, we're seeing workers actually like get active again, right? You're seeing a lot more protests pop up in your in the media, right? It's happening with more frequency. Once again, I do have my opinions about that, and I don't know why the left has such a hard time with unification. Excuse me. I mean, it's literally what the corporations do in order to attain the power that they currently have. Guys, just network and stop trying to take glory. Just network, make it work. But yeah, you're seeing a lot more protests popping up. You're seeing a lot more. I'm not going to say success stories, right? You don't want to look at this whole like new resurgence of entrepreneurship with rose-colored, or excuse me, rose-tinted glasses. But yeah, people are sort of taking things into their own hands. You have people who are selling food, in their neighborhood. You have people who are now going into handyman services. Yeah, people are no longer enticed by the carrot on the stick, right? That's been dangling over our heads, and I mean, it has honestly, it's too high to attain now for most people. So they're not enticed by that anymore. They have been rocked by the uncertainty, by the instability of the traditional American workplace, right? It doesn't exist anymore, right? It just doesn't. It's a little easier for those to digest. It's a little easier to digest for those who have taken the red pill, let's say at least a decade ago. But for now, yeah, it's a shock to many. Um, so I'm just gonna say, if you can, just kind of look back at history. You'll see this is nothing new. Now, I just want to reiterate, why is this happening? The media is spinning it as just people are lazy now, right? In general, but in particular due to the coronavirus. And, in my reality, it doesn't look like much of the US actually locked it down at all. I know in San Antonio, Texas, you can't call anything anyone did here a lockdown. Um, yeah, there are a couple of places, a couple of states which the media really played up. California and New York, for instance, but can't really say there was much of a lockdown for most of the U.S. But they're blaming it on laziness because people just got used to being at home, right? They're blaming it on unemployment because people were making more on unemployment than they were working in the private sector. Yeah. So employers, that means you need to boost wages if you want workers back. Why in the world would you expect someone to go accept lower wages? Probably lower than what they were making, say, 2 years ago, if they were working for you back then. They're blaming it on people's fear of catching the virus, right? I I don't think that one holds as much water, especially looking at how many people were just still, once again, not locked down, participating in large social events on the regular and things of that nature. Um, and to be honest, a lot of us, aka essential workers, I don't know how essential it is to sell carpet at a do-it-yourself home improvement store, but yeah, I kind of had no option at the time but to um, expose myself out there on the sales floor for a completely non-essential retail space. Now, once again, I have my reasons. I got child support obligations. That's just the reality of it. I mean, there's people out there who make money off of that. To each their own. Um, yeah, just the media is spinning it, placing the onus on a failure on the worker's part, and this is not the case. So once again, and I kind of brought this up earlier, the reality is one, employers aren't responding to people's applications. It's just not happening. You can look around, hop on the net, YouTube, Reddit, wherever. And this is not like a media sensation thing. Just talk to people you know in your neighborhood. Talk to some of your family members. For me personally, at least in this country, I haven't had I haven't gone longer than maybe a week or two between jobs until recently, and it's like now just nobody's responding. I don't care how qualified you look on your resume. This is happening across the board here, right? So they're kind of once again forcing people to take their gainful employment into their own hands. You know, they're not they're not responding. Two, the pay is just too low. Once again, 2001, people were still offering $8 an hour for a $10 or for a 10-hour position. Um, yeah, no, you can't live off of that. Why would anybody waste their time? So on the flip side, once again, it's a side effect. Like people aren't going to respond to that job. They're not interested in giving someone 40 hours of their lives weekly, knowing they can't make ends meet, eat and pay the rent, and keep the lights on, and keep the hot water on. You know, hours have increased. Yeah, it's just like the whole 1930s didn't happen. We haven't brought child labor back yet, but the way we're going, I'm figuring they're going to find some way to do it, right? Yeah, employers are just requiring more of your time, and it's just not worth it. So people aren't willing to do that. You know, I can do that by myself. If I'm not going to make a living off of giving my time to you, I'm just going to take my chances, having a little more freedom with my life and seeing still not making ends meet, right? Yeah. And then there's all this contract work. There has been such an increase of contract work where someone will offer you a low wage, but say, hey, you need to have your own tools. You need to have your own truck. You need to have your own passenger van. You need to have your own freight carrying vehicle. You need to have, your own computer, your own phone. Okay. So, as a contractor, you're still responsible for the overhead for those work tools anyway. Why would you go sign a contract with someone offering a wage way lower than you can honestly, you know, uh, ask for yourself and actually receive um, the income that your labor is worth, right? So, like, yeah, come on now. That's just pure laziness. No, if you're going to own the means of production, then own the means of production. Don't put your means of production costs on the employee. That's the trade off here. If you own the means of production and pay me a wage, I'm not contributing to your means of production, as in the tools that it takes to sustain that business. No, I'm already giving you man hours and labor, right? Not an even trade there. So, yeah, no, people aren't going to respond to those either. Why? What's the point? You don't get health benefits anyway. So, yeah, here we are. Once again, this gig economy, not a new concept. There have been freelance workers throughout the history of human labor, right? As long as there have been any institutions of labor, there have been people who have wanted to be untethered to anyone and their policies and provide products and services on their own accord, right? And I mean, honestly, those are often the best guys because they're not rushing for profit. They're trying to master a craft. So, much respect to all the freelancers of the world who have done it throughout history. And now, in particular, even more than the 2008 crisis, is a very, very ripe time because, one, just the shift in attitude of the workers here in the US, right? Once again, the workers have finally started to act on their, I'm going to say, fed upness, on their disillusionment. They're finally starting to take actions and take charge, right? And you know what? And say, you know what? I've tried this traditional workplace for so long, and it's gotten me nowhere. Matter of fact, it's making things worse. Um, you know what? Steve Jobs wasn't any smarter than I was. Why can't I do it too? I absolutely can do it too. I do it for this company for 40 hours a week, sometimes more. Um, and for those who don't get petrified by sort of that first question of, hey, oh crap, where am I going to find customers? Um, I find if you stick with it long enough, you'll be able to sustain yourself. So, yeah, entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is at its ripest in the present moment in late stage capitalism in the US. And once again, I'm not trying to address this. I do not want to address this, and I don't want to uh, give any impressions about entrepreneurship with the rose tinted glasses on, right? This isn't about that. I have not even taken that step fully yet, right? Me and the girlfriend, we are staring at the cusp. We are on the fence. We are on the ledge. Uh, Hanging 10 right now, right? It's very scary trying to work through the disillusionment, or rather, coming to terms with the reality of the illusion of security and stability through the traditional American workplace, right? Maybe yes, in the 1950s or so, it was the golden era for uh, American for the American working class here in the US. Now we are far, far from that reality. And yeah, entrepreneurship, um, very scary stuff, right? It requires you staring that uncertainty, staring that unstableness, um, right in the face, right? Straight in the eyes. And that's very scary for a lot of people. I can tell you right now, I've been terrified for the past 4 weeks of my life. And sometimes it's exciting because I do have a business plan myself. While I have to do what I can to maintain a decent income, once again, child support obligations, I'm legally obligated to do so. Um, I do, like so many others, want to not participate in the system anymore, right? And it's something that I mulled over for almost 2 decades now. I've never liked the traditional American workplace. It's always been a terrible, oppressive environment. And to be honest, like gig hustle culture sucks. So, yeah, very scary for a lot of people looking that straight on and knowing without the shadow of a doubt that, yeah, your financial survival is all on you, bud. Terrifying stuff. So, right now the gig economy is oversaturated. It is more than booming because these people like me um, may have or have had a plan for many years to try to escape the traditional American workplace. Um, and with the illusion of security and stability that a biweekly paycheck gives you, I mean, anybody who's lived over the past 40 years can see the decline in benefits, the vanishing pensions. Uh, you're getting less per hour. Salaries are worse. If you are making anywhere near a middle class income, for that position, you're typically required to live for the company now, whether that's being on call or just requiring just crazy amount of days a week or hours a day, 16 hours a day, right? Like a Taco Bell manager making $13 an hour should not, yeah, just that's not an ideal situation there, right? So I've noticed, you've noticed, a lot of people have noticed. So yeah, the Great Resignation is happening. Once again, it's a feature built into capitalism. Why is it built in? It's to keep a reserve. Capitalism always needs a reserve of the most desperate, vulnerable people who are willing to accept lower wages. I said this earlier, and accept longer hours, which is what we're seeing being offered more, right, on the job boards. And just willing to accept worse work conditions. I mean, heck, for years we have seen the atrocities of working in Amazon distribution warehouses, right? But it's normalized. People accept it. It's almost like how they used to say, apply at Walmart. People kind of tell you, hey, go work for Amazon now. Just uh, it's a terrible new normal. Once again, how are we going back in our meager advances in labor rights, right? Uh And then health benefits, the vanishing health benefits. Health benefits have been seemingly non-existent for at least a decade now here in the US. There was a big influx in part-time positions being offered to people, although those part-time employed individuals on paper end up working full-time and more hours. They're still not eligible for the health benefits, right? So that's one tactic that has been used. Now just places just aren't even, they're flat out not offering, right? So for the most desperate of employers right now, that's sort of one of the things they're using to leverage. Um, it's some of them are offering benefits for part-time workers, right? But those are few and far between if you're on any of these job boards, surfing them on the daily. So yeah, that's the why it's happening. Once again, it's a feature for all of those saying, especially in the left media sphere, capitalism is not broken. Late stage capitalism is not broken. It is functioning as intended. It is baked into the system. All right. It's in there. It's working just how it's supposed to work. So, yeah, the Great Resignation has spurned an increase in those who are moving into the realm of entrepreneurship, right? And yeah, you're going to see a ton of articles who are trying to spin it as this glamorous thing, and it is not. Your stomach will churn. You will be living off of acids. You're worried on the daily where your income is coming. When your goal is to net $100 a day, right? Like, yeah, people start getting kind of worried. Um, and once again, the best thing to do is to not fall into your bad coping mechanisms, your vices, your addictions, right? That's just one going to cost you a lot more money. Don't fall into despair. Just right. Hey, you survive this long, it's going to work out. Okay, so I do want to say that first and foremost. Whatever that biggest thing you were that had you feeling the exact same way 10 years ago, that's past you now. This will pass too. So don't fall into despair. Don't go into a bigger money pit because you're trying to cope with that despair, right? If you're staring entrepreneurship in the eye, then this is something that you are expected to feel on a daily basis. It doesn't matter how successful you are. And this is from what I hear. So a lot of anxiety, a lot of unstableness, right? A lot of uncertainty. And I say a lot of that is because it's always been there, but we've had sort of the veil of a safety mask with the traditional American workplace. But looky here, right? Capitalism, I like to call it cannibalism. Because it is. It's a weird system in which it destroys itself, sort of like an Ouroboros, right? It creates a lot of very what's the word I'm looking for here? I'm not going to say unintended effects, but sort of contradictory effects, right? So while this great resignation is happening right now because capitalism has gone through yet another predictable crash, and employers aren't responding to positions because they need to create an artificial scarcity to build a huge reserve of desperate workers. That desperation in itself sort of like a double-edged sword, because that desperation will greed, innovation, and drive, right? For those who finally are pushed to the breaking point and finally actually decide to take that step into entrepreneurship and working for themselves, providing a product or service to people uh, without having someone write you a corporate check biweekly. Uh, and that's a good thing, right? So I'm sure a lot of you have noticed that capitalism isn't real great for inspiring innovation. Uh, very few things stand out. The iPod, maybe, right? And this is just sort of what my mass media influence brain can bring up from, past technological sensations, right? That were had great PR. But capitalism usually resorts to taking an idea and just milking it to death. Rinse and repeat, 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 repeat. Do the same thing until no one's interested anymore and it's no longer profitable, right? And so with that, any of those who don't pay attention to, like, say, any politics or business news, when these businesses start to move more into the realms of monopolies, like your Apples or your Microsofts, they start to lobby and pay off the government to stave off competition and to keep, would-be entrepreneurs with a great idea from releasing their idea through whatever patent laws or I don't know, whatever high entry fees to even play the game. You name it. But now, when workers are finally getting fed up enough to say, you know what, I'm not giving you any more time of my life or my labor, and I'm going to fill this niche that you keep hiding from the masses. And that's great, right? For instance, there's a project that I want to try out here that, while I've seen things very similar, I haven't seen exactly what I'm offering, right? I'm looking in particular for I'm emphasizing mobility and modularity, right? In what I'm going to try to pursue here. So, once again, whatever you do endeavor in, do your research, get out in the internet, look at your community, see what's being offered, see what's not being offered, see why it may not be offered. Does it just not work there, or has no one ever offered it before in your area? And I'm being very vague with that because, once again, I don't want to throw out any ideas. A lot of people try to, when it comes to, hey, ideas for making, whatever, freelancing or entrepreneurship, a lot of people want to turn to, like, online, whatever, marketing or businesses. I mean, I don't know. Whatever that looks like to you, just remember to do your research. But yeah, times like these are the greatest times for innovation for products and services. Once again, when these monopolistic corporations start losing their manpower, their workforce, little springs of production start popping up elsewhere in your community. Hey, maybe there's a guy who's offering a cobbling service. Maybe on top of this cobbling service, he's offering some sort of apprenticeship for, his underprivileged youth in that community who then learn new skills. And maybe you can do this service for a lot cheaper. Or maybe, you know what, maybe the residents don't even have a frame of reference because they don't even have a cobbler um, in their community. And it's great that you're there to offer this product or service, right? But maybe you found a better way to cobble, right? So I don't know. That's a weird example, but you get what I'm saying here. It's very sad that with industrialization, we lost the whole sort of. I don't want to say, because I'm sort of looking at that with rose-colored or rose-tinted glasses too, sort of honorable. But it used to be, you had your masters of craft, your blacksmiths, your cobblers, your I don't know, your gardeners, you have it, you name it, whoever it is, whatever they do, right? It may be the best maid in town or best cook in town, or I don't know, but we've turned away from that in favor of increased production, mass production, right? And for stuff that people aren't necessarily even asking for, is just because at one point in time it made money. So capitalism is going to milk every bit of profit out of it as it can. But now you're going to start seeing interesting concepts pop up, right? Now you're going to see on the lower end, lower costing end, maybe to the consumer or customer, more products and services with one, better customer service, two, increased craftsmanship and durability, maybe more efficiency in how they deliver the product or service. So I'm just going to say this, those ideas that you have been sitting on for the past decade or so, or maybe the past couple of decades, if you are a Gen Xer or a baby boomer, and you have been completely disenfranchised by or with the American dream, and realize that it's been long dead. I think Reagan put the final nail in that coffin back in the 80s. But it's a scary time, right? So I ultimately don't have any answers for you about any of this right now. I'm not going to say I will ever. But this was just sort of an introduction here to sort of the topics that we plan to tackle with the Proletariat podcast here, right? It won't just be me here, sort of monologuing or giving you stream of thought for hours on end. I will eventually have people to join me on topics to provide their point of views as well. I also want to encourage you, please, please, please. Well, be nice, but comment, interact. I'm going to go ahead and once again try this, setting up the Patreon and Twitter and YouTube, and send feedback. Let me know your thoughts. I'm not necessarily trying to debate with anybody, but yeah, just let me know your thoughts about these subjects. Maybe there's information that I got wrong. Maybe there's information that I kind of skimmed over and you want to know a little more about. What have you. If you have any questions, hey, can you explain this a little more? If you want me to maybe address certain topics, what have you. But I love this to be interactive. The last time I did a podcast was just around the height of the George Floyd killing, and it was the People Class podcast. That was more focused on U.S. political education, but it also sort of covered world world politics as well. More specifically, working class issues and why things are the way they are here in the U.S. So I just covered a lot of capitalist U.S. history, covered slavery, things like that, supporting people unionization and striking and things of that nature. I did attempt to do a Samuel Gomper style sort of, hey, let's get like workers of the U.S. to unite and come together under a big federation type deal, but the left does not want to be united here in the U.S., and that's a sad reality. And not to boast, I say this humbly. It did do pretty well. I did it for about 6 months, and I was averaging about maybe 10 new subscribers every month. So I feel like that wasn't too bad. Um, but once again, I don't want this to be an echo chamber, right? This is not for lefties to come in here and expect me to be commenting on the RSS feed of the day. Like you have so many people who already do that. Jimmy Dore, the Rational National, um, wasn't it David Packman, whoever, you name it. They're all talking about the same thing on any given day. So this is not an echo chamber. This is not to sit up here and debate theory. I will cover things, regarding Marxism and socialism and communism and things like that. This is more to incite a an environment of community, unity, working class, unity, solidarity, coming together, actually taking action, inspiration. There will be some education as well. But yeah, don't expect me to go like full deep dive into like Marxist Lenin theory or anything like that, right? Once again, I'm just a guy who in class millennial of the brown skin variety, and yeah, I just really want to be alive and see things improve in the American workspace because, I mean, anybody sane looking at this, the past 40 years, it didn't have to be this way. And so many other countries, developed nations, have moved past this barbaric system. And unfortunately, the powers to be here, that group of sociopathic hoarders, man, they really did a number on us. And with all their guns, it's real hard to get past it, right? So I get it. But I want to be here to be support. I do feel that there's an oversaturation of voices out there already, but I just couldn't put it off any longer. I hope to see you out there someday. And one of these days we will actually have an amazing working class in the US. Maybe by time we catch up, we'll actually see that Keynesian sort of idea of, heck, you'll probably work 4 hours a day if you want to, because technology has just taken over so much production that human labor is just not even needed anymore. That is the ultimate dream, right? But yeah, I hope to see you out there someday, maybe at a rally or a protest or something. Please, please, please send me your feedback, comment, whether you like it or not. Thumbs up, thumbs down, wherever this is. On any streaming service. I haven't really decided where I'm going to do that yet. But I want to just end with giving you these encouraging words, right? You have already spent years giving 40 hours or more of your life, your talent, your skills to an employer who has made a better life off of it than you have. At this time where it is, people have lost the most already, and have very little to lose moving forward. Take a deep breath. Take a look up at the sky. And realize that you do have the power to take things into your own hands. Remember, your idea doesn't have to be groundbreaking. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. But focus on something that you yourself would like as a customer for a certain product and service, and I guarantee you there will be other people who will appreciate that you did, right? So, to all of my soon-to-be, would-be, and ever hustling, ever struggling freelancers and entrepreneurs out there, I want to give you all, and our hourly wage workers, once again, stand up for your rights, stand up for yourselves. We're here for you, right? Just we need to network more. But to all of our working class warriors out there, this is the proletariat giving you peace, love, and solidarity. Have a good week out there.
You're living high, but guess what? Your income's low.